Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start with the modern approaches of comparative politics. And before proceeding on to this topic, let's have a brief background about what we have gone through so far. So, comparative politics, when we started, the definition in its simplistic form, it is the comparison of political system of different countries. And herein lies the difference between both the traditional and modern approaches. So the traditional approaches, they look at only the formal channel. They compare the formal channels only. Formal channels such as state, well-established governments, their legal and constitutional institutions, the various constitutions of different countries. So traditional approaches, all in all, they have limited themselves, they have confined themselves to the formal channels. But the modern approach is they have widened the horizon and they include formal plus informal channels both. So these informal channels, such as international organizations and agencies, then various pressure groups, lobbies, interest groups, civil society, they have also been included. Then they have also given place to individuals, which is glaringly missing from the from the traditional approaches. So you can see the dynamism and the horizon that has been expanded in modern approaches. Now, when we talk about various approaches, we have gone through the traditional so far. So the traditional comparative politics, also known as comparative government, they they have studied various government through approaches such as philosophical approach. And in this approach, various political philosophers they try to figure out the consequence, the events that led to consequence. So in a short, they have used logical principles of analysis, logical principles of analysis and reason to arrive at the conclusion or arrive at the outcome of what of chain of event, of social and political chain of event, and for which their core idea, their core platform, uh, from which they trace the beginning of chain of event, it is the thought that occurred, the thought that germinated in the minds of individuals, and it is the thought, it is the knowledge of this thought which is called philosophy, and by the very same logic they try to arrive at the outcome. Then the other institutional approach, it has limited itself to formal institutions. And those formal institutions such as state, its organs such as legislature, executive, uh, judiciary, and it has also widened its horizon, widened its ambit to include various other quasi-judicial organizations, quasi-judicial institutions. But all in all the institutions they are formal. No informal institution has been studied or taken into account. Then the third approach is the legal one, by which it tries to look at all the legal aspects of a society. Those legal aspects which are concerned about law and order situation, various rules, various regulations, various bylaws, and the dispute which may arise from it and the mechanism to resolve such a dispute. So this approach, it looks at only one aspect of human society, that is legal. Then the other is, the final is the historical approach, which tries to weave all the political events via the thread of history. So You can say the difference between the historical and the philosophical approach. Uh, they have the same principles. They have the same mental framework. Both of them, they want to arrive at the outcome so that lessons can be learned. But whereas philosophical approach, it applies a logical principle on the basis of the chain of events and the thoughts that may have some bearing on it. On the other hand, historical approach, it tries to look at all the historical events that may have some bearing on the political events. So in a short, they try to look at politics via history. So for them, they believe that it is the history that acts as a guide and teacher of modern politics, for which they try to draw conclusions, they try to look for resources and sources of both. And its criticism is that most of the history is concerned about more of eulogies and biographies. If you look at history, most of them they have talked about war and conquest and events and personalities and kings, and very seldom the historical records they talk about the actual political event or the actual common decisions that may have taken and may have come into fruit. So these are the four traditional approaches. Now it's time we should move on to modern approaches. So to overcome the paucity, the drawbacks of traditional approaches, various new approaches have been promoted by new political intellectuals. And these approaches are mainly concerned with scientific study of politics. The first innovation in this regard comes with the advent of behavioral evaluation in political science. So let's have a look at the characteristic of modern approaches. First, these approaches they draw conclusions from empirical data. So you can see the difference between modern and traditional approach. All of them they try to draw conclusions to make sense, to find patterns so that new lessons can be learned and we do not need to reinvent fire all the time. It's like the same exercise of traditional and modern approaches. All of it, all of these exercise, all of these activities, all of the actions of drawing conclusion, they can be drawn down to a single motivation. That is, we do not need to reinvent the fire every time, or reinvent the wheel every time, as the maxim goes. So this maxim, this quote, it means that we do not need to start everything from scratch in every generation. We have a working brain of 1350 cc, which is which is capable enough to make sense of everything. We have a very complex brain, and this complex brain it can identify all the patterns by analyzing the data and drawing conclusions. So if we can if we can involve ourselves in such an activity, then why do we need to reinvent everything all the time? So so this same exercise of drawing conclusion, it is common in all approaches of modern politics. But the difference is it lies in the sources and the parameters that are involved in drawing conclusions. So the traditional approaches on one hand, they have drawn conclusion from sources such as history or from the mental framework of people or from institution or from constitutions, whereas modern approaches they draw conclusion from empirical data, which means to analyze all that is available, all the sources available at one time, to gather all the sources and find the patterns among this big data. So This one is the first difference. The second difference, these approaches, they go beyond the study of political structure and historical analysis. Then modern approaches, they believe in interdisciplinary study. So whereas traditional approaches, they have confined themselves to a particular discipline, such as the historical school, it limited itself to study of history, to study of biographies and historical records. Whereas modern approaches, they want to study all the aspect, all discipline, and to arrive at conclusion via interdisciplinary study. So by which it means they want to study not only political science and history, but also sociology, philosophy, anthropology, economics, political economics, international economics, and whatever other discipline that can be included. And the final difference, that modern approaches stress scientific methods of study and attempt to draw scientific conclusion in political science. So the first modern approach is political economic approach. So this approach, it says, when evaluating the economic approaches, it is established that policy formulation of economic nature and determination of principle of planning, which really always come into part of governmental activity, that can be included. But they have an objection here. I guess I have not been clear enough in this. So political economic approach, it is tries to draw a conclusion via integrating politics plus economy. So you can see it is this interdisciplinary study in which political science and economics both have been integrated between two, and the close relation between the two has been emphasized. But the objection here is that even if they want to study, even if they want to draw a conclusion via integrating the two subjects, there is a problem with it, which is most of the policy formulations related to economic, such as the budget formation or devolution of fund, distribution of fund, uses of resources, and various policies such as agricultural policy, welfare policies, all of them, they are in domain of government. They are done and they are planned and implemented by government. So in majority of countries, public issues are economic issues. And sometimes the only actors are the personnel of the government, such as Council of Minister and their persona. So this one is another limitation. Then fiscal policies, industrial policy, agriculture policy, labor policy, all policies that concern individuals are economic issues, but the foremost actor are the members of government, and in which uh, various branches such as legislature, executive, and judiciary. So herein, the planning is done by legislature, whereas implementation is done by the executive branch. There are many specialists and advisors, but here the problem is various other modes of input, such as civil societies and intellectuals, teachers, uh, common people, and you can say outside inputs are missing from such policy formulations. Then the greatest attribution of the economic approach to study of politics, it emanates from writing of Marx and Engels, which is the Marxist school. And here, the study of economic approach, it has a clear relation with the principles of class struggle espoused by Karl Marx. So this principle, which says there is an innate struggle between the two classes, the bourgeois and the proletariat, or in other words, there is a class struggle between those who owns the means of production, especially the owners, and the employees. And according to the Marxist school, this class struggle, it is common in all capitalist society, and they have they attribute this struggle to be negative in nature by saying that owners they try to exploit the employees, and this is how capitalism it try to extract as much profit as possible. So again, the economic approach it tries to look at many such principles, such as the first being the principle of class struggle. Then it tries to look at the increasing impoverishment and capitalism exploitation. The all the three sources of this approach are based on economic factors. And Marx and Engels they have highlighted the heterogeneity of interest between the classes. That is the difference of interest between the owners and the employees. And this heterogeneity it is there. You don't need any further explanation for that, because you know that owners they try to accumulate as much profit as possible, whereas employees they want to be paid fairly, mm, or at least equally if not more. So this heterogeneity it lies there and has been highlighted by Marxist school. Then capitalist profit-making motives lead to exploitation of workers. And to liberate from exploitation, the workers are enforced to struggle. So this is the gist of it, and you will time and again you will come across the same principles, same objections, and same solutions in all kinds of sociological and Marxist school. Then, outside economic influence, politics has no independent authority. So the meaning of this line is that ec- economic or politics both are interrelated. So economy it can it can exist without politics, but politics cannot exist without economy. The reason for which is whoever control the purse, whoever control the finances controls everything. So it is the money which has the influencing power. So this line very beautifully says that without economy, without holding the purse, politics has no existence. Then the Marxist theory of base, the state's institution and superstructure is a matter of relation between economics and politics. And yet again, while studying political economy, we must look at and we must go through the many of Marx's prominent ideas. And one of which is Marx consider that there is a base and there is a superstructure. So it's like a pyramid. So in this pyramid, the superstructure it is manned by and filled by various people of society, whereas the base, which is the apex, it is held by the elites, the political elites, the capitalists, the owners. So these elites, which can be equated to state, they controls everything, and the relation between these elites, the state, and society is of economic nature. Well, it's true up to a certain extent because money or finances they hold influences, they hold powerful influence in all sphere of people's life. So the drawback here is that it's not money which has the power. Consent has the power, consent of people. And it is by the same consent that the state it is in power, constitutions are in power, laws are in power, because this same consent it manifests itself in form of law abiding citizens, or in other words it is the consent by which state rules, and this consent it has been given by people. And if people do not give it their consent, then this consent can be taken back, either formally or informally, either violently or non-violently. And we have seen many revolutions which is about the consent. And in political economy approach, this consent, it gets directed in form of money. So we can say consent, money is a medium of this consent. We all have, all the people, we have agreed to accept this medium to be a arbitrator of our economic activities. So that's the power, that's the influence, and that's the role of money, that it is an arbitrator, so that we do not have to go through the barters and many such inconveniences while dealing with economic activities and while surviving. This money, it has received the consent of people, and this same consent, it gives power to money, because the power of money that is held by state, it is given by people. I mean, taxes. People have given taxes to people. State does not have any recourse to grow its money. State does not have its own money. All the money that state possesses, it is given by people in form of taxes, in form of various deductions. So in short, Marx's approach towards states or toward government institution, it has a drawback here, that state, it has a power, and this power of consent, it has given by people. As long as people desire someone in power, the entity, it will remain in power, whether it is a state, whether it is a constitution, whether it is about laws and regulations. All of them, they are there, they have their existence, which is limited by the consent of people. And money is also one such method, one such medium that has consent of people. And the same power that money enjoy, it has been given by people to the state, so that the money can be employed for requisite purposes. This is the core idea. And even if the state tries to control all the money, it will certainly lose the value of money. First, in form of people may take the consent back, and in that sense, money will lose its value. Second, if state tries to accumulate all the money that is available, all the taxes, by levying higher taxes and keeping those money to itself, then this accumulation of money will lead to a glut in market. Glut means uh, lack of supply or less supply of money in market. If less supply of money, then more commodities will be chased by people. So this will lead to an disequilibrium in demand. It's like saying that more people are chasing money. So if the, the supply of money is decreased and its demand increase, then its price will increase. This may lead to a situation of hyperinflation, or in other case, it may lead to stagflation or disinflation. So no state will want to see such economic disasters. Then interest group or pressure groups, they create pressure to achieve economic activities. So therefore, interest group politics and economic approach are also mutually dependent. So the meaning of this line in this passage, it means that in all kinds of countries, especially liberal democratic countries, the conception of economic approach, it is interdisciplinary, so that it is not only related to politics, or not only related to formal aspect of politics, but various other informal channels such as interest group, pressure groups, lobbies, civil society, and all of them, they exert pressure on state to employ, you can say, better economic policies. So, in this way, politics may have a mutually symbiosis with the economic approach, yet economics is not restricted by politics. This is just of it. Then let's have a look at system approach. And this approach falls in category of modern approach. And the notion of systems theory was emerged from ancient time, which date back to 1920s. And Ludwig von Bertalanffy is considered as the earlier advocate of general systems theory. So this theory has its roots in study of biology, and it is only after the Second World War that social scientists they claim for amalgamation of sciences for which they took the help of systems theory. So this particular theory, general system theory, it talks about integrating various scientific disciplines so that a composite and comprehensive analysis can be drawn out. So when the general system theory in its abstract form traces back to natural sciences like biology, in its operational form, it has a bearing on anthropology. The meaning of which is that even if this general system theory, it started with the study of biology, it tried to integrate various disciplines with it. And finally, it found its culmination or it found its better soulmate in terms of anthropology. Because anthropology, which means the study of man, the science of man, this subject, it studies all aspects of man. Well, I am a teacher of anthropology, so I can tell you better about it. Anthropology, it studies not only archaeology, but biology, politics, economics, sociology, genetics, history, both recorded and unrecorded, linguistics, about languages, and finally, sociocultural anthropology, which is also part of it, which means the study of various society and their cultures from ancient to the modern one. So you can see here, anthropology, it tries to studies everything that is there and everything that is related to man. So by our archaeology, it studies the fossils of various hominid species, all the ancestors of man, all the ancestors of Homo sapiens. Then it tries to read history via various fossil records, hieroglyphics, and then recorded history itself. Then in biology, it traces various elements in a person's physical structure. So this study, it starts with genetics by studying various cellular and subcellular structures such as DNA, genes, population genetics, and then it proceed forward to study various structures, including the skeletal shape, the neuroscience, the morphology, and then the study of man is incomplete without studying politics, the history of politics, and then economy. So you can see here everything that is related to man has been studied. So anthropology is, you can say, a clear winner and the required force here. Then the general system theory, it embraced sociology and psychology in the decades of 60. Then this theory became an important tool to evaluate and investigate key factors in political science, which is when looked at a common angle with all other approaches, it means drawing patterns and drawing conclusions. Then among political scientists, David Easton became the first to apply this theory to political analysis. And finally, this approach describes the relationship of political life with other aspects of social life. So that's why this is known as general system, because it talks about a whole system of a man's life. And this idea of a system was initially borrowed from biology by Talcott Parson. And this approach signifies that a political system operates within the social environment. So which it means that study of politics, it is inseparable by various elements of social environment. Consequently, it is not possible to analyze political events in isolation from other aspects of society. And this diagram has been given in which this environment is the society in which we live, and this is the political system, whichever it is, formal or informal. So here, this political system, it works via inputs and outputs. Let's say we are talking about state. So this state, it cannot works according its whims and fancies. It cannot work according to its own. It needs some input, and it is directed and guided by people, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. So such state actions, they are uh, channelized by, they are influenced by the demands and support. So demand is, let's say, input such as people, they need some new welfare policy or new policy. And now this policy, let's take an example of scammers. So you may be aware that scams in the present time, they have mm, gone exponentially. Everyone is scamming. Wherever you go, from auto rickshaw to the phone calls you receive, to the people you meet, to the restaurant in which you eat, to the people you date, to the coaching institution in which you enroll yourself into, to the friends you talk to the shopkeepers you buy product from, uh, to the bus conductor, to the you can say state functionary, even reputed officers, even politicians. Everyone is scamming. Everyone is resorted to scam, and this leads to environment of mistrust, because in such a situation we cannot trust anyone. So this mistrust situation, it needs a policy solution. And so this is our demand that there need to be something done about such a scam and scamsters, for which we directed our demand, we forwarded our demands. Then let's say a person A forwarded this demand. Now there are many like-minded people, and if this demand, it got support from a multitude of people, many people, then the state will be pressurized to accept these demands and seek a policy solution to dispel mistrust. So this is how inputs, demand, and support, they get manifest in terms of decisions and policies which are output. So the state may make some policy, may make some law, may tighten the noose around such scams and scamsters. And then these outputs, they further lead to a feedback loop, or further lead to a feedback mechanism, that if the state made such a policy, which is an output, but it is the input, which means subject, which means the people, they decide if the given output, if the made policy fills the required criteria, if it meets the expectations. And if it doesn't, the inputs, people, they will further exert demand on people, demand on state, and such demand will be supported by people, and then this cycle will go on. So this is how this political system works. So political system, state, and its machinery, it operates within a social environment. So this environment, it produces demands from various parts of society, such as demands for reservation, demands for soothing working conditions, of minimum wages, demand for better transport facilities, demand for better health facilities, and different demands have different levels of support. So let's say if you want to protect environment, then this demand, it will have greater support than if you want to seek a ban on a movie. So if you want to ban a movie because of any reason, then it is likely that not all the people will support your move. Anyway, David Easton said that both demands and support the established inputs. So political system, it receives these input from the society, and after considering various factors, the government decide to take action on some of these demands while others are ignored. And through this conversion process, inputs are converted into output by the decision makers in form of policy, decisions, regulations, and laws. Then these outputs, they loop back to the input via feedback mechanism, giving rise to fresh demands and starting a recurring process, which is common and which is a healthy part of all political system. Now, the next paragraph. Presently, the political system has been chosen to term state government because it includes both formal and informal political instruction and processes. The system approach to political institution by behavioral school has evolved a new concept. David Easton, G. A. Allman, and Morton A. Kaplan are credited for applying this approach in political science. So the meaning of this small passage, this discrete passage, is that political system in general theory, it includes state or government, or it denotes state and government, but it is not confined to the formal aspect of government. It includes both formal and informal policy. So it is just about the notation. And this theory, it has been created and supported by David Easton, G. A. Allman, and Morton and Kaplan. Then the explanation of this behavioral school of political science. According to this theory, political behavior is conceived as a system, and the political system is well defined as authoritative allocation of values with threat or actual use of deprivations to make them binding on all. The meaning of this in simple terms is that political behavior of all the people that constitute both the formal and informal channel, which means the state authority and people, all all of them, all of their political behavior, whether it is voting, whether it is exercising their right, whether it is uh, obliging, whether it is their law-abiding obedience, whether it is their demonstration, they're seeking their right, whether it is about asking for their due share, whatever political behavior it is, from which starts from exercising their vote to protesting against their demands. All of such activities, they constitute political behavior. And that political behavior, all in all such activities, it is conceived as a system. And the political system, which is conceived here, it is defined as an authoritative allocation of values with threat or actual use of deprivation to make them binding on all. This There is a compulsion here. You can see the heat of compulsion in a heat of some mandatory threat here. So this threat, which may have different connotation here, in short, it means compulsion. And in simple form, this means that state has an influence to make the rules binding on all. So for which state has a machinery. It is not that state is helpless. It has a machinery to make those rules, those policies, those laws compulsory for all people. Because first, the state has arrived at such a rule, at such a policy, such a decision, such a law by discussion, by following the democratic process. So it has invested time and resources to arrive at this particular juncture. Now, this juncture, which the state has arrived at, now the state need to implement such a decision, which is not favored by all the people. So let's say if state makes a policy on scam and levy some fine on them, whatever fine it is, whether it is a jail term, whether it is any incarceration or any other kind of punishment. So this punishment, it should be meted out to those scammers, and unless this policy is implemented in both letter and spirit, people will not people will not tolerate such a state if it cannot implement its policy, and for which compulsion is necessary. So state has this power. This is the meaning of this paragraph. Then characteristic of political system are three. First, comprehensiveness, interdependence, and existence of boundary. So all the three characteristics, they need no explanation, because comprehensiveness means all around. So a political system which includes the political behavior of all people that reside in any political system. Let's say the political behavior of all Indian will constitute a single political system. So it is comprehensive. We are talking about people of all shades, all demands. We have included the diversity, and everything has been included in it. So this is what makes it comprehensive. Then interdependence, which means that all the people, whether from different shades, whether from different faiths, different castes, different occupations, and different channels, different languages, they live in an interdependent system. Then existence of boundary. So this is there that there's this concept, which is both a physical and an abstract concept. It means state has its physical boundary, which can be seen. Then state has a legal boundary, which is known as jurisdiction. So Indian state cannot exercise its legal power, its law, beyond its political boundary, beyond its geographical national boundaries. So there are boundaries. Then state, it has its own abstract boundaries, such as the state cannot encroach upon people's right. The state cannot encroach upon the fundamental rights of people. So here, even if the state is all powerful, still it has some certain boundaries. So, and in the same way, people also, they have some boundaries, just as the use of section 144, in which assembly of 4 or 5 people, more than 4 or 5 people, it is discouraged. And now here, even if people have the right to assemble, but because of imposition of such rule, their assembly, it has been bounded. So this existence of boundary can take many forms and many examples, but I think this sentence or these three characteristics, they have been explained well. Now the behavioral approach. So this approach emerged during 20th century, and the important consideration of behavioralism has been the study of political behavior as an area of study within political science. So this behavioral approach, it also resembles the general system approach. So the difference is general system approach, it studies all kinds of behavior, all kinds of political behavior, and whereas this behavioral approach, it is confined to, it is limited to study of political behavior in general. So this concentrate on the individual as voter, as leader, as revolutionary party member, and influencer of group and political system. Then behavioralism, it stresses upon scientific, objective, and value-free study of political occurrences as conditioned by environment, formally the behavior of individuals involved in that phenomena. So here, the definition has been clear that behavioralism, it studies political behavior of individual within which is conditioned by the environment. So environment here is is concerned about the situation, the social condition in which any such political behavior is expressed. So environment here can can mean anything because we are talking about political behavior. Then let's take example of voting. So here the very exercise of voting, this is an environment which let's take example of election. So election is the condition, the atmosphere in which the behavior of individual will be studied, their political behavior, which is the exercising of their vote, which will be studied. So here meaning is clear. The election process is the environment and voting behavior will be the political behavior that will be studied. And you can take any other example. Let's say we are talking about some demonstration, such as the farmers' protest, which spanned, I guess, 2 to 3 years. So farmers protested against some government policies. So this chain of event that started with the introduction of policies, then the protest that was started by farmers. So policy and then protest. This chain of event, this will be the environment, and this behavioralism, it will study behavioral political behavior of individual who are protesting. And as such, it focuses on the role of behavior of individual at various levels and via scientific analysis. Then behavioralism is quite different from behaviorism. So these two terms are often interchangeable, but there is distinction. Behaviorism is narrow in its application. It refers to response of an organism as aroused by some stimulus, and it does not consider role of feeling, ideas, prejudice that determine the response of that individual. So behaviorism as a concept, it is you can say technical or the impulsive response of an individual when aroused by some stimulus. So stimulus, you can say some trigger, some event. So for example, when you prick someone, so this very act of pricking will be stimulus. Then the response that arise out of it, maybe anger, pain, frustration, whatever it is, this response will be the behavior. So this is the you can say a gist of behaviorism, and this one is narrower than behavioralism, especially when it comes to the study of all aspect or all factors that form the response. Another attempt at explaining it. Behaviorism, it will note down that when a man was pricked, he he burst into anger. So this is behavior. When you prick someone, man will be angry. Now, other other factors will not be considered. So the role of feelings, ideas, prejudices, they are clearly missing. I'm going to take another broader example here, such as in Indian politics, the use of freebies. So this use of freebies, it is a product of a false study of behaviorism. So freebies such as people have been given money and gifts so that they vote for the donor in the upcoming election. So this is the ultimate objective, that if people are given money and gifts, they will vote in their favor. So thing, this is the stimulus, and voting is the response, and it does not take any other factor into account, whether people will vote, whether they consider money and gift as valuable, whether they take the gifts, if they take and if they do not vote, what will be the percentage of people who who receive the gift without voting. But if the same exercise, if it take many factors into account, so that the analysis, it can arrive to an exercise that is akin to big data, in-depth analysis kind of behavior, then that in-depth analysis, which takes many factors into account, will differentiate behavioralism from behaviorism. So there are not much more differences in them. The common differences is just that behaviorism is, you can say, prima facie, the first impulsive response, whereas behavioralism is as an in-depth study which takes into account various factors. Then David Easton differentiates between behaviorism and behavioralism through an example. So this paradigm adopted by behaviorist is SR, which means stimulus and response. That if you give freebies, people will vote in their favor. But behavioralists, they have improved it by making it SOR, which is stimulus, organism, and response. So here, one more factor, one more intermediate factor has been integrated, and this factor, it is more like study of all aspects of emotions. So if you give freebies, then you consider many factors, many data, a broader analysis to arrive at how many people will respond in the favor that was sought by the stimulus. David Easton, he regards behavioral liberalism as an intellectual tendency on part of political scientists to study empirically the political behavior of person. And it means nothing. It's just that this behavioral study, it is a scientific and intellectual study to analyze all the data that is available, and to objectively study the political behavior of people. So the features of behavioralism are: first, regularities. So this approach believes that there are certain consistency in political behavior which can be expressed in generalizations on theories. So when you want to analyze political behavior, it is similar to saying that you want to find political patterns, and such an activity will be successful only if there exists some consistency in behavior of people, such as the same thing, if you it is believed that if you give people freebies, they will vote in your favor. So this response, it might have arrived by watching it, or by the very act of happening. It may have happened before, and then if this had happened before, then this event, it has certain consistency, and those consistency can be taken into account to arrive at theories, to arrive at generalizations of pattern. And such patterns may help the researcher to analyze the political situation as well as to predict the future political phenomena. Then verification. The behavioral school, it stress testing and verify everything. And the phenomena is If it is not verified, it will not be scientific. Then techniques, they use many research tools to generate valid, reliable, and comparable data. Finally, quantification, which means they should measure and quantify the data, the political data of all the factors that can be gathered. Then they also emphasize on separation of facts from value, so by which they want to engage in objective research, which has to be value free, which means if it is objective, then personal biases, personal prejudices, personal stereotypes, and all kinds of subjectiveness need to be eliminated. And systematization means the whole exercise must be systematic, because if it is need to be objective, then it can happen only if the exercise is systematic, if it follows one sequence after another, one to-do list after another, and it tries to make political science a pure science, an objective study. And finally, should not be behavioralists state that political science should not be detached from various other social sciences such as history, sociology, economics. Yes. Now let's have a look at advantages of behavioral school. So this approach attempts to make political science a scientific study. And second advantage, it has brought human behavior into arena of political science, because behavioralism, it is talking about political behavior of individual at all levels, and with that too with considering all other factors. So by example, you can say uh, we are talking about one political event, such as which example can I take? Yeah, two very prominent example. The first one is 2024 general election, and then 2025 Delhi election. So now, in this situation, in the event, the outcome of 2024 general election, they culminated in this way, that one one party BJP, it got less vote than it expected, and one political party, it got more vote than expected. So this reshuffling of politics between two opposite political spectrum. So many place BJP on the far right, whereas Indian National Congress in the center of political spectrum. So in that way, both these political party, they have got their vote share reshuffled. So this shuffling of vote share, a new a new voting behavior in part of the Indian populace. So this voting behavior, I am damn sure this behavior is being studied in the present time, and it will be studied in the times to come, because such such a turn of event, it talks a lot about the common psychology of people. The people have the force to shuffle the pack of card, to shuffle the political pack of card in a way that is not expected by any political scientist, any voting strategist, and that too with such anonymity, because no exit poll, no voting behavior, no political strategy, no newspaper could have predicted such an outcome. So this outcome, the outcome of this general election, it shows that the people, they want to walk on a capitalist line while not severing its connection from socialism. So all in all, people want to keep both socialism and capitalism in check, while giving more sway to the capitalism by integrating more avenues of freedom, more capital enterprises, more avenues of profit making and entrepreneurial activity, more avenues of economic freedom, then they also do not need to sever the conservative values such as um, to give a say to state authorities and administration to inculcate socialist principle into the economy, to keep government school, government institution, and government run welfare policies in action. So this political behavior has a different connotation and needs an in-depth study to how such an um, such an outcome could have predicted. Because if you are not aware, BGP was very high on its expectation. BGP believed that it will cross 400 mark. Our legislature, the lower house, it consisted of 545 people, and out of which 543 are directly elected. So out of 543, BGP believe it will be able to garner more than 400 votes. So this chest thumping was discarded by shifting the vote bank to one strand of political spectrum. So this was unexpected, and this was kind of a new result. So here, while looking at this outcome via behavioral approach, many required patterns can be drawn and studied. And another example, a recently held 2025 Delhi election, and in which one incumbent, one ruling party, AAP, it was removed, dethroned, and its place was given to BJP. Now you can see a new political shuffling, and this behavior also could not have been predicted. So all in all, human behavior is quite dynamic, and the more you enter into it, the more you want to study it. And such unpredictable behavior which we have been seeing in last 4 5 years, especially in the political sphere, it seems that human behavior, to study human political behavior, many elements, many factors must be taken into account. That too with the voluntary involvement of various other disciplines. Because to study human political behavior will be incomplete without studying anthropology, common people, economics, their society and sociology, then their psychology. So all these factors cannot be ignored and cannot be taken lightly to study human behavior. Behavioralism is a school that tries to bring such dynamic field, such dynamic and voluntary and combustible field into the study of political science. And it will also help in predicting future political events, especially not via the angle of political party, but uh, as a way of reforming the politics. So let's say if BJP and Indian National Congress, if they somehow, by this analysis of big data, if they somehow come to know the drawbacks in both of them, that why BJP got backslided and why INC got a few numbers up, but still it could not form majority. So to this strange tug of war, if they can find the reasons, then they can make the required amends. They can reform their own way of polity so that both of them they can exist in the political spectrum without failing, without facing the due extinction. Because Such unexpected events, they clearly portray Indian people as dynamic and dominant thought. And such dominance, it can manifest in terms of some extreme decisions, some extreme, such as they may, if they can backslide such a giant party and rise up such uh, such a party which was in a poor state in last two general election, then they can also shuffle the cards in a way that they can exterminate, they can eliminate one political spectrum entirely from the Indian atmosphere. So, such unpredictability, if it is known, if some idea can be taken and some future events can be predicted, then reforms are possible. And let's have a look at criticism. This approach has been criticized for its dependence on techniques and model and ignoring the subject matter. So the supporters of this approach were mistaken when they thought that beings behave in a similar way in similar circumstances. So again, uh, the platform, the base upon which behavioral school they put the argument is that some people behave similarly in similar circumstances. So this is what they mean by when they say there is consistency in political behavior. So it is only by finding the consistency, some similarity in political behavior that they can arrive at some predicted behavior. But to believe that all the people they will behave similarly in similar circumstances, it is uh, again a flawed argument. And second argument, most of the political phenomena are immeasurable. And then researchers, who is also a human being, can never be value neutral. And he will have some personal biases, some subjective bias, some what you can say, prejudices, some stereotypes. Then a third criticism, that they overemphasize on the scientific methods and techniques. Then it is also criticized as pseudopolitics because it aims at upholding only American institution as the best in the world. Then it stresses behavioral uh, effect on the cost of institutional effect, because to believe that all the results that are drawn by and that are affected by the behavior of people, it is also looking at the glass half empty, because other than the behavior of people, there are many institutional effects such as the group behavior or behavior of the policies undertaken by state. So many such institutional effects have been ignored, which forms the last criticism. Now let's have a look at structural functional approach. So according to approach, society is a single interrelated system where each part has a definite role to play. So this structural functional approach, it says society, the political society is a structure and all the appendages of the structure has certain functions. These approaches accentuate these structures and functions. Gabriel Allman was an advocate of this approach, and he described political system as a spatial system of interaction that exists in all society. So according to him, political system does not occur in silos, but as an interactive system which is interdependent with its appendages. Appendages means its limbs, its arms, and all the arms, all the other organs, they have different certain function and which are in performing shape. Then according to him, the main attributes of a political system are comprehensiveness, interdependence, and existence of boundary. Like Easton, Allman also believed that all political systems perform input and output function. So if you can take example of the same feedback mechanism. So here, uh, input, system, and output. All the three are the branches, the arms of the overall comprehensive political system in which people and their demand, it forms the input, then the state, it forms the part of political system, then output, such as policy and the implementing branch, executive, they they form the part of output. So all of them, they have their separate functions, and those functions were highlighted by this approach. So input functions of political system are political socialization and recruitment, interest articulation, interest aggression, and political communication. So meaning of which is the input function, especially in the diagram of feedback mechanism we have seen. So input is related to the demands and support of people. So the function of these input, which is according to this structural functional approach, each of the organs, they have certain function. So what are the functions of input? So these functions are, first, political socialization, which means various political elements need to be socialized because all the political jargons, they are technical in nature and may not be understood by people in a general way. And such as, let's take example of voting behavior. So when to vote, how to vote, who to select, which manifesto works in which way, how to take part in political activity, in demonstration, in asking for votes, in protest, all of such political activities, they need socialization. They need to be generalized to people. So such educational function, it is its first function known by name political socialization, and then recruitment, which means the people, they form groups based on demands and support. So such demand, which if supported by many people, it also needs recruitment in form of a separate entity. Then interest articulation means to express our interest, and which may take different political expressions such as protest, or even a simple sit-in, or even if much more in you can say non-peaceful way, such as presenting memento, or presenting documents, evidence, even simply talking to the administrator, talking to a government functionary, they are also a way of articulating, expressing your interest. Then interest aggression, it can take both radical form and extreme violent form. So radical forms such as protest, demonstration, bonfires, and then the extreme violent form, you know, um, the armed rebellion, the civil war. Then next function is political communication, which means how things should be communicated to all that are related to such a political act. So all the people that are involved, especially uh, let's say common people, shopkeepers, businessmen, casual parents, teachers, intellectuals, artists, all of them, they needed to be conveyed the political acts in a simpler way. So this is also a function of the inputs. Then Allman, he makes threefold classification of governmental output functions. Input functions we have seen here. Now output functions are rule making. So the output function are rule making, rule application, and rule adjudication. So these three functions, they belong to three different branches of government. Rule making is the prerogative of legislative branch. Rule application belongs to executive branch, and adjudication, resolution of dispute, it belongs to judicial branch. Now, to summarize, the comparative school of politics and government scans political institutions from constitutions to executive to parliament to party. So all government authorities, all government functionaries and its tools, they have been studied by this comparative politics, and it encompasses systematic study and comparisons of world's political system. It describes the differences between as well as similarities among the political system of different countries. In contrast to journalistic reporting on a single country, comparative politics is mainly interested in discovering patterns, processes, regularities among political systems. So here in this paragraph it says that it is not just journalistic reporting of political events of a country. Comparative politics, it discovers patterns and regulations among different political systems. It looks for trend and for the change in pattern and try to develop general hypotheses that define those traits. So this is it. Thank you very much and kindly subscribe the channel.